Jesus, according to the Islamic teaching, and actually this is also the kind of summary of my book to a certain extent, called Islam's Jesus. The book came in 2014. The book came out in 2014, published by University Press of Florida. It was a little bit frustrating. Somehow the editor didn't like the topic, I think. He was very reluctant to go forward. And I was so pleased that later another editor took the job, and we went so easily, and we finished the publication of the book. So the book is now available. So what we are going to talk about is actually from the book. If you like the details of it, go and read the book, I would say. So he was born of the Virgin Mary. That means, according to Islam, and to my knowledge, this is also according to Christianity, that Mary was not touched by any human being. The birth of Jesus was a miracle. Through the divine intervention. When angel, in one verse of the Quran, it says angel, another verse says angels. So angel Gabriel, and probably with him other angels, when they come to Mary and they say, Mary, you will have a pure child. God will give you a pure child. Pure. The quality of Jesus in this verse is pure. Purity is emphasized. Mary says, how can I become pregnant? I have not been touched by any human being. And the angel says, when God says something, it happens. When God says be, it happens. For God, there is nothing difficult. For God, everything is possible. With God, everything is possible. Nothing is difficult for God. So having a child without being touched by any human being is a divine decree for you. And that is very easy for God. That's what angels said to Mary. And therefore, Muslims and Christians are all in agreement that the birth of Jesus was a miracle. So when we say Muslims and Christians, imagine half of humanity, more than half of humanity actually, believe that Jesus' birth was a miracle. And that's a very important point of agreement between Christians and Muslims. So, bringer of peace, the role of Jesus is to bring peace. At the end of time, he will come and bring peace. So I will elaborate on the second coming. What is the meaning of the second coming? But he will bring justice and peace to the world. That is his role at the end of time. He is one of the 5 elite prophets in Islam. There are many prophets, according to the Islamic teaching. One saying of the prophet of Islam suggests that there were 124,000 prophets of God before Islam. Among these, it is not exactly, I mean, what's understood from this narration is not that exactly there were 124,000 prophets, but it's about plurality, the big numbers of prophets who came before and declared the message of God to people. So among these large number of prophets, 5 of them are the highest. 5 of these prophets are the highest of all. They are known as Ulul Azm. Ulul Azm, Arabic term used for these 5 prophets, means the possessors of steadfastness. These 5 prophets are known as the possessors of steadfastness. Who are these 5 prophets? Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. So Jesus is one of these 5 elite prophets, great, highest of the all prophets. Peace and blessings be upon them all. It's because in Islam, when you say the name of Jesus, you say peace and blessings be upon him. It is a kind of respect for the prophets. When you say Moses, you say peace and blessings be upon him. When you say Muhammad, you say peace and blessings be upon him. Not just simply saying their names. You have to say something, you know. You have to acknowledge the greatness of these personalities by saying this phrase, peace and blessings be upon him. He was a Muslim. Now, this should not be confusing you. You realize that I put with lowercase m, not uppercase m. Muslim, by the way, in Arabic, there is no lowercase uppercase because Arabic is, I think in Semitic languages, there is no lower and uppercase. In Latin alphabet, we have lower and upper cases. So he was a Muslim. That means he was submitting himself to the will of God. Jesus was, because the word Muslim means the one who submits himself or herself to the will of God. That person is a Muslim. When we say with uppercase M, that means the person who accepts the message of Prophet of Islam, that Prophet of Islam brought a message, and people who converted to that message, who accepted that message, they are known as Muslim with capital M. But with lowercase m, pre-Islamic messengers of God were all Muslims. They were submitting themselves to the will of God. For example, in the Quran, we have stories of the prophets, like the story of Solomon. Solomon invites the queen of Sheba to become a Muslim. That means to become, she was a worshiper of this, worshiper of sun, like worshiping stars. And Solomon invited her to believe in one God. And when she came and accepted the religion of Solomon, the Quran says she became a Muslim. Again, with lowercase m. That means she became submitting herself to the will of God. So this term could be confusing sometimes, but I intentionally put this way and underline it so that when we say Muslim, it doesn't mean always like the person who is known as Muslim in modern day term. Is much more larger concept. So all prophets were actually submitting themselves to the will of God, like all companions of, let's say, messengers of God. Let's say all disciples of Jesus were submitting themselves to the will of God. And Muslims will say they were the Muslims of that time. Allah's message is the same. God's message is the same. Just time changes. What is the essence of the message? There is only one God, the creator of heavens and earth. And this is since the beginning of humanity until the end of time. That is the message. There is only one God, the creator of heavens and earth. Jesus was a miracle worker. He was he was able to show people miracles. I will mention some of his miracles. So he was able to do extraordinary things that normal human beings would not be able to do that. Like he would make, the Quran says, I don't know if this is in the Bible or not, the Quran says that he would make from clay a bird, the shape of a bird. Like he would make clay in the shape of a bird, and he would breathe into it, and the bird would become a living bird and flying. Who can do that? You can try if you like, make a shape of a bird from clay and then make it fly. That was Jesus. And Jesus was doing this as a miracle. He would say, I am doing this because my Lord gave me this power to do that, so that you understand that I am speaking on behalf of my Lord. So all human beings, all people, all my people, the people who Jesus would address, he would say, now you see I am doing some extraordinary things. That means I am speaking on behalf of my Lord. Then accept my message. So the purpose of miracles was to show people that he was not a normal person. He was not like an ordinary person. He was an extraordinary person. He was a messenger of God. And therefore, God will change the laws of nature for his sake. And therefore, God will show people that they have to believe in him, because now he is showing something extraordinary. So this is like a kind of the Islamic understanding of miracles of the prophets. Why God gives miracles to the prophets? To show people that these people, these messengers of God, are acting on behalf of God, so that people will believe in them and they will come to their message. Another aspect of Jesus, he is an intercessor. In the Islamic tradition, there is intercession on the day of judgment. Intercession means that Jesus, for example, will ask God to forgive some people. Jesus has that authority. God will give Jesus and other messengers of God to intercede for the sinners. Jesus may say that, oh Lord, this person believed in me. Please forgive his sin and put him in paradise. Prophet Muhammad will say, oh Lord, this was from my community. Please forgive him and put him in paradise. And because Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, Prophet Moses, all these messengers of God are beloved by God, God will not reject their request. God will say, okay, you want this? I am going to forgive them and put them in paradise. So that's the meaning of intercession. Okay, now I make it a little bit bigger. I forgot to make it bigger. So Jesus in primary Islamic sources, when we say primary Islamic sources, basically two major Islamic sources. One is the Quran, the holy book of Islam, and the other one is Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet. So Jesus mentioned in both of them, in the Quran and in the sayings of the Prophet. Hadith is a term used for the sayings of the Prophet of Islam. And there is a huge literature on Jesus. the sayings of the Prophet are protected, compiled by Islamic scholars, put together, and they are available. They are very well studied to the extent that you can say this saying of the Prophet is sound. That means is very strongly related to the Prophet. And another one you can say, oh, this is actually based on the research of the scholars, is a weak one. It is actually, there are some doubt that the Prophet said this. So all of these sayings of the Prophet have been studied and categorized. In other words, graded, sound, weak, or between, based on the quality of the narration. Is a remarkable study of the sayings of the Prophet. And this is happened like 900 years ago, considerably long time ago. After the death of the Prophet, they started to collect the sayings of the Prophet. And now they are available. Actually, even online, you can have access to those sayings of the Prophet. So in the Quran, Jesus mentioned in more than 90 verses. There is a chapter in the Quran. Currently, if you look at the Quran copies and the table of contents of the Quran, the name of the chapters, that currently the name of that chapter is Al-Saf, the row, R-A-W. Sorry, R-O-W. And in reality, I mean, there are other names of that chapter. One is called Al-Hawariyun, the disciples. Another name for that chapter is called Isa, Jesus. There are many names for one chapter of the Quran. It's very possible that you look at one chapter of the Quran, you see one name. Yeah, it's not easy to put many different names at the same time. So they choose one name, but actually one chapter could have more than one names. And therefore, one of the chapters of the Quran is named after Jesus. Chapter 61 is named after Jesus. And there's another chapter named after Mary, which is chapter 19 of the Quran. The whole chapter is after Mary because the story of the birth of Jesus is mentioned in that chapter. Okay, characterized by his message, Jesus is mentioned in the Quran. The emphasis is on his message, which is Injil, the gospel. The gospel is the message of Jesus. And therefore, the Quran speaks of the gospel. It says, we send the gospel in which there is light and guidance for humanity. Now, Muslims, when they teach their children in the young age, they say, we believe in the 4 books of God, the 4 great books of God. The Torah, revealed to Moses, Zabur, which is the Psalms revealed to David, Injil, the gospel, revealed to Jesus, and the Quran revealed to Muhammad. We believe in all of these 4 great books of God. And therefore, the message of the gospel in the Quranic term is very essential, is the one that is actually invited to this message by Jesus. So Jesus focused on the message. Come and accept this message. He would invite people to the message that was given to him by God. So the gospel is very significant in the Islamic teaching. This is a verse in the Quran about Jesus showing miracles to people. He says, surely I came to you with a sign from your Lord. A sign from your Lord. I create from clay the likeness of a bird. Then I breathe into it, and it becomes a bird by God's permission. And the verse, it continues, like at the end, Jesus says, and I know what you are storing in your houses. Yeah, Jesus not in their houses, but he's seeing, he is able to see. God gives him that ability. And then he says, worship my Lord and your Lord. Worship God, my Lord and your Lord. He never said worship me. He said worship my Lord. Another aspect of the message of Jesus is that he confirms the Torah. He doesn't reject the Torah. Confirms. He says, I came to you to confirm the message before me, and I am bringing a new message from God to you, and that is the gospel. So there is no contradiction between the gospel and the Torah, according to the Islamic teaching. Both are messages from God. The only difference is time. Based on the need of the people of that time, the focus on one dimension, and based on the people of the time of Moses, the divine focus on another dimension. But the message is the same. The essence of the message is the same. And this is true for the Quran as well. There is a verse in the Quran about the disciples of Jesus, when Jesus says, who are my helpers in God's cause? This is about the al-Hawariyun, the disciples. The Quran speaks of them very positively, those who are accepting the message of Jesus. And in fact, this Quranic verse says, O Muslims, O believers, be like the disciples of Jesus. Be like them. They are models for you. How? When Jesus asked, who are my helpers in the cause in the cause of God, in God's cause? And the disciples said, we are your helpers. We will help you. And they helped. They supported Jesus. So the message of God was supported by the disciples of Jesus, and they are praised in the Quran. They are considerably high level in the realm of spiritual life. So they are so important that the Quran presents them as models for Muslims. We don't know their numbers. The Quran doesn't speak of their numbers, but it says his disciples, the disciple of Jesus. Now, one thing, I think this very important aspect of Jesus in the Islamic teaching is his second coming. There are many references to his second coming. In the Quran, in the book, I think in the first chapters, I mentioned some Quranic verses that are hinting at the coming of Jesus, but there's no direct reference to the second coming in the Quran. But in the Hadith, there are many direct references in the sayings of the Prophet. So the Prophet speaks of the coming of Jesus. And that's why it has become a part of Islamic theology. When Islamic scholars of theology counts the things that they have to believe in, they list the coming of Jesus as one of them. To believe in the coming of Jesus. To believe in the second coming of Jesus. Or as the Islamic tradition would say, in the descent of Jesus. So Jesus will descend from heaven to earth to bring justice. What is the meaning of this? There is a big debate on that among Muslim scholars. The agreement, I would say probably over 90%, they agree that yes, Jesus will come. The meaning of it is that Jesus will come. But is it literal or allegorical? There is a discussion of it. What is known is that the Prophet of Islam spoke about this. And he said he will come. Jesus will come. He doesn't say I will come. He says Jesus, the son of Mary, will come. Among you, all Muslims, he addresses his community. And when I studied this, I have to confess that I didn't know that there were so many books written on the coming of Jesus. Some of them, I realized that they are very inflammatory, like as if Jesus is coming tomorrow. Wait, he's coming. Some of them are very academic. So I categorized the sources that I found. I think one of them is by an Indian scholar, Allama al-Kashmiri. He collected 100 sayings of the Prophet on the coming of Jesus, on the second coming of Jesus. And he says, it is so evident, it is so true that there is no doubt about the second coming of Jesus. It has become tawatur. He uses a term that is used in the hadith literature. It becomes a tawatur. That means it is so significant that there is no possibility of doubt about the second coming of Jesus, because he collected about 100 hadith on this subject. So I divided the literature on the subject into three categories. The first category I call the modernist approach. Modernist approach, there are modernist philosophers, Muslim philosophers. They do not accept the authenticity of the texts about the coming of Jesus. They say, yes, there are sayings of the Prophet, but these are not really related to the Prophet. It is later added to the Islamic tradition. There is no such a thing that a person who died 2,000 years ago can come back. Forget about it. That's their approach. Now, is this a very large group? No. I would say the literature that is related to modernist approach, maybe 3% of the overall literature. The overall literature on the second coming of Jesus. It comes from their understanding of philosophy, basically not very well versed in the authenticity of the hadith, because in order to make a judgment about a saying of the Prophet, whether this is authentic or not, you have to have certain level of hadith authenticity literature, what's called ilm al-isnad, the knowledge, the science of the narration, the chain of narration, the science of the chain of narration. You need to have that knowledge in order to decide about the authenticity of one saying of the Prophet. Philosophers didn't have that, but they just said, this doesn't sound like right. I cannot accept a person who died 2,000 years ago come back. It's impossible. So that's their approach. As I said, it's a very small group. The literalist approach interprets the text in a literal sense. This group really think that Jesus will come from sky. He will descend from sky. I remember once I asked one of those literalist people, I said, so you mean he will come with parachute from sky? He said, I don't know if it's parachute or something, but he will come. Definitely will come from sky. That is a very large group, I would say, maybe even the majority. The majority thinks this way. He will come. Why? Because the Prophet said he will come, and the Prophet is right, and then he will come. He will come in a way that will be very visible. Everybody will be able to see him. He will be coming from sky, descending from sky. Now, when I say descending, there is also the descent of Jesus in the Christian tradition, that he descended to hell to rescue the people in hell, is not related to that. The descent of Jesus in the Islamic teaching is coming to the world to bring justice, is not related to the concept of descent in the Christian tradition. The third approach, and I think in my book I elaborated on this greatly, this is called the interpretive approach. The interpretive approach, they say, yes, the Prophet of Islam said it, had many sayings about the coming of Jesus, the descent of Jesus, and he is right, but he did not mean this in a literal sense. He should be understood, his statements should be understood more in an allegorical sense, in a different way, not in a literal way, but in an allegorical way. They accept the descent of Jesus, but not as the literalist would say. They would say, there is no doubt that the Prophet said about this, because all these sayings of the Prophet are showing that. But we look at the sayings of the Prophet and we say that it is not literal. It should not be understood literally. It should be understood allegorically. And they bring some examples of the sayings of the Prophet, that the Prophet used allegorical language. On one occasion, I think I mentioned this hadith in the book, the Prophet's wife asks him, he says, which of us will meet with you in the afterlife first? Because they love the Prophet and they would like to be with the Prophet even as soon as possible after death, after the death of the Prophet. So she said, which of us will meet you after you die? And the Prophet said, the one whose hand is the longest. And Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, says, the narrator says, we started to measure our hands, whose hands is the longest. And we realized that later Zainab died the first, and Zainab, actually, her hand was not the longest. She was the tiny one among us. And the reason the Prophet said this term, in Arabic language, when you say someone's hand is long, that means that person gives charity a lot. So Zainab was known as the mother of the poor. She would give charity to the poor people. And because of that, the Prophet used the term long hand to indicate her quality of charity. She would be a very charitable person. So basically, in other words, the Prophet said, the one who gives more charity will meet with me first. But he used a term that about the length of hand, but it was actually not the real sense. It was in allegorical language. So the one whose hand the longest did not die after the death of the Prophet. The one whose hand, actually, the one who gives more charity died after the Prophet. So in Arabic, there is this concept of allegorical language. For example, in Arabic also, if you say there is a pile of trash in front of John's house, I'm saying John to give you like a better sense of it. What is the meaning of it in Arabic? There is a pile of trash in front of John's house. When you say this in Arabic, that means John is generous. Why? If John is generous, that means he will have more guests. He will have more guests, he will cook a lot. If he cook a lot, there will be more trash. And there is a big pile of trash in front of his house. In Arabic, when you say this term, there is no need to have trash in front of his house. This is a term used for generosity. So you go and you look at the front of his house, there is no trash. But John is generous. Well, that term, that sentence is correct because John is generous. And that's what's meant in that sentence. But if John is stingy and there is a pile of trash in front of his house, the statement is not accurate because he's not generous. So it's not supposed to be understood in a literal sense in many Arabic terms. And the coming of Jesus is also related to this. Excuse me. So some hints in the Quran, as I said, the Quran doesn't directly speaking of the coming of Jesus, but there are some hints. Jesus will speak to humanity from his cradle and in manhood. And he is of the righteous. This is in chapter 3, verse 46 of the Quran. So he spoke from his cradle. That was miraculous event. When Mary gave birth to Jesus, she brought him to her people. But before that, God sent her a message, revelation, that when they ask you about the baby, don't speak. Use sign language. It doesn't say use sign language. It says don't speak. And she took the baby to her people, and her people were very upset because in the Quran, Mary is single. She doesn't have husband. and a girl that is not married and now have a baby is a big scandal. And they said, Mary, where did you get this baby? Very, very angrily. You see the frustration of Mary. Mary says, I wish I died before this and I was totally forgotten. It is actually speaking of her situation. But Mary already received the divine message that she should not talk. She shouldn't. She didn't talk. She just pointed at the baby when they asked her this question. And they said, how can we talk to a baby in cradle? As Mary, as if when she pointed at the baby, as if she said, don't ask me, ask the baby. They understood from her sign language. And then they responded to Mary. They said, the Quran speaks of this. How can we talk to a baby who is in his cradle? Now, at that moment, Jesus spoke from his cradle. And he said, Inni Abdullah, I am the servant of God. Atani al-kitab. He gave me the book. The book is the gospel. Atani al-kitab. A prophet. He made me a prophet. And then he says, peace be upon me when I was born. Peace be upon me when I will die. Peace be upon me when I am resurrected. God commanded me to pray, to give charity, and to be kind to my mother. With that statement, Jesus declared the innocence of his mother, actually. Islamic scholars are elaborating on the statement of Jesus. It's a very powerful statement in the Quran. This is in the Quran, chapter 19 of the Quran. And they say, why Jesus used past tense? He gave me the book. Jesus is in his cradle. He has not received the book yet. But in Arabic language, again, in the eloquence of Arabic language, there is a rule, the rule of eloquence, that if the future event is certain, 100%, then for the sake of eloquence, you can use past tense as if it happened, because it is so clear, it is so certain. So receiving the book and being a messenger of God was so certain that Jesus used past tense in that case, not future tense, as if it happened already. Scholars of the Quran are making big discussion of the terminologies in the Quran. So this is like the first part of his life. But there is also another part of his life, then is in manhood. He will speak again in manhood. So Islamic scholars, commentators of the Quran, are saying that the second part of it is during his second coming. So he will come and he will speak again as he spoke from his cradle. And that's why this is considered a hint at the second coming of Jesus. And surely, another verse, and surely Jesus is a sign for the hour, so have no doubt about it and follow me. This is the straight path. The Quran says, Jesus is a sign for the hour. The hour, as you know, means the end of time. So when Jesus comes, that means the end of time is near. He is a sign of it, a sign of the final hour of human history. and Islamic scholars have interpreted, I would say the majority, have interpreted these as a reference to the coming of Jesus, to the second coming of Jesus. Some would say, no, actually, it's not related to that. They say, yes, Jesus is a sign for the hour. The Quran clearly says this. But in fact, what is meant in this verse is that Jesus being with no father and miraculously being born is a sign that the one who made Jesus this way is able to bring resurrection of human beings after they die. So this is an evidence of the resurrection of entire humanity. God is powerful. He will resurrect them and he will judge them and he will put one group into hell, one group into paradise. Bad criminals will go to hell. Good, kind people will go to paradise. And Jesus is a sign of it, a sign of the power of God. The God who created Jesus with no father is powerful to bring humanity back to life and judge them and put them in the proper place. So there is a big discussion on these Quranic verses. And for the sayings of the Prophet, wow, I have 10 minutes left. I'm checking my time. I thought that 1 hour will be too much, but it seems like even 1 hour is not enough for this talk. The Prophet says, by God Almighty, in whose hand my soul is, Jesus, the son of Mary, will soon descend among you Muslims as a just ruler. Now, in this hadith, in this saying of the Prophet emphatically saying about the coming of Jesus. He emphasizes, not only emphasizes, he swears. Actually, he swears by God Almighty. I swear by God, in whose hand my soul is, Jesus, the son of Mary, will come, will descend among you, will come from heaven, will descend from heaven among you Muslims as a just ruler. He will bring justice. That is very powerful saying of the Prophet, clearly saying about the coming of Jesus. In another hadith, the Prophet speaks of the future of Jesus. Like, how was Jesus would look like? How would Jesus look like? He says, it has been shown to me while I was sleeping. So he sees Jesus in his dream, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and peace and blessing be upon Jesus. He sees Jesus in his dream. In my dream, while I was circumambulating the Kaaba, the holy shrine of Islam, the Kaaba, as you know, is the holy shrine of Islam in Mecca. So I was circumambulating around the Kaaba. I saw a man of brown color, the best one can see among brown-colored human beings. Now, in America, sometimes I ask, what is the color of Jesus? Well, the hadith of the Prophet says brown color. But I think in America, we have different color, right? Anyway, let's not go into the details. So the description of Jesus in this hadith is that he was brown color. One of my colleagues once said, I think it makes sense for me because Jesus was born in, let's say, in the area of modern day Middle East. And that is probably very normal to have brown color rather than very considerably white color. And it makes sense, he said. And then he says, the hadith continues, actually, I just took part of it. He says he was so clean that as if water was dripping from his head, that he was just coming out of bathroom, coming out of like shower, that indicates the cleanliness of Jesus. Jesus is so clean, which is also an Arabic term for allegorically mentioning the cleanliness of someone when you say like water is dripping from his head. That means he's so clean, just took shower. And there is another saying of the prophet, surely Jesus, the Messiah, will find some people from among my community as his helpers. So in the second coming, when he comes, the prophet says, some members of my community will help him, will help Jesus, will be his disciples, will be his helpers. Rumi speaks of Jesus. I think I will refer to the book, some of these. Go ahead and read the book. I would say, for Muslim mystics, Jesus is the teaching of love. The teaching of Jesus is the teaching of love. And that's why one Islamic scholar, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, he says, to love, love, and to hate, hatred. If you love, love will increase. If you hate, hatred will decrease. So the interpretations briefly, let me finish with these two interpretations about the coming of Jesus, the second coming of Jesus. When I say the coming of Jesus, I mean the second coming, always. Just took that way. One is Muhammad Abdu. Muhammad Abdu is a prominent Egyptian Islamic scholar, a theologian. He speaks of the descent of Jesus and his ruling on earth. He says it is indication of mercy, love, and peace. So the coming of Jesus is actually not the coming of the person of Jesus, but the dominance of the message of Jesus, which is the dominance of mercy, love, and peace on earth. When this happens, that means Jesus has come. And he would say, do you work for this? If you work for this, if you work for mercy, for love and peace, you are on the side of Jesus. Now, who is the opposite side of Jesus? There is totally another story. We have no time to get into that. And that is Antichrist. The opposite of Jesus is Christ. The opposite of him is Antichrist. And are you on the side of Jesus or on the side of Antichrist? If you work for mercy, Muhammad Abdu says, if you work for mercy, for love and peace, you are on the side of Jesus. No need for Jesus to come from sky. That's his argument. There is another Islamic scholar, Nursi, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, and I really like his approach. He says, the coming of Jesus, he does not deny that he will not come. He says Jesus is like angel. He can come and go. Many people will not see him. Only those who are close to him can see him. Close people, like very spiritual people who can see the unseen. They can be actually around Jesus. But that is not what's meant in the hadith. What's meant in the hadith is that there will be dialogue between Muslims and Christians to bring justice and peace to the world. The things are not happening accidentally. The things are not happening without human agents. And therefore, these two large religions, the members of these two large religions, that means the members of Christianity and Islam, and maybe we can say the members of the traditions of Abraham, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. If these people come together, Nursi argues that they can bring peace to the world. And that is the message of Jesus. And that's why he says renewal of Christianity. Christianity will renew itself and will return to the original message of Jesus and will be united with Islam, will be alliance with Islam, and will bring peace to the world. I made like a rough calculation. Muslims, Christians, and Jews, if they come together, they make 58% of world population. They can make a big change in the world. And let me finish with the last sentence of my book, the last paragraph, and that is the conclusion of the conclusion, because I have conclusion, and also this is the conclusion of the conclusion. The current trend of interfaith solidarity is a great step toward a peaceful future for humanity. It can be argued that when the Prophet of Islam said that Jesus will come as a just ruler, he emphasized the importance of justice and peace on earth. If the trend toward dialogue and cooperation leads to justice and peace in our world, it will mean the fulfillment of the messages of both Muhammad and Jesus. Peace and blessings be upon them. Thank you very much. Now I can stop sharing my screen and then get your questions.
Okay. Father Augustine, do you want to coordinate that, or you want me to?
Yeah, Professor, this is fine.
You're going to lead us in the discussion of the questions, or you want me to do that?
Yeah, you can read out, Professor. Can you see those questions in the chat box, or shall I read it out for you?
Oh, the in the text
questions in the chat box.
In the chat, okay. Okay, let me see. Anub has a question. Of these 5 prophets, only Jesus was born from a virgin and was resurrected from death. Does that mean he was superior to other prophets? Yeah, that's a very good question. In the Islamic teaching, among these prophets, the only prophet who was born with no father was Jesus. Jesus is unique. With regard to the death of Jesus, Muslims, the Quran says they could not kill Jesus. Jesus is still alive. He will come back still alive. So the Christian tradition says he is resurrected. He's alive, but he was resurrected. Muslims would say, no, actually, he was not even killed. He's still alive, and he is in heaven, living in heaven. Why he doesn't eat and drink? Because his nature is like angelic qualities. He doesn't need to eat and drink for survival. This is like a one dimension of the concept of the resurrection of Jesus. Does that mean he was superior? Generally, Muslims would say when it is mentioned, which prophet is superior? There was a debate, like a discussion between a Muslim and a Jewish in the time of the prophet. The Muslim said, Muhammad is superior. And the Jewish person said, Moses is superior. And they came to the prophet. And the prophet said, don't compare me to my brother Moses. I will see my brother Moses before the throne of God when I am resurrected. I don't know if he never died or he was resurrected before everyone. And he indicates that Moses is higher than him. So humbleness is recommended in the Islamic teaching. There is a verse in the Quran, it says, we believe in all prophets. We do not distinguish between them. We don't say this is higher than this. Although the prophets would say, the prophet says, my brother Jonah. He speaks to Jonah, like Jonah is a messenger of God in the Islamic teaching. And there is a big story that how he ended up in the belly of fish. And then he was rescued by God. His story is remarkable in the Quran. And the prophet praises Jonah, and he says, even do not compare me to my brother Jonah. My brother Jonah is higher. So with this regard, there are some unique aspects of Jesus. For example, among the prophets of God, the only messenger of God who receives the title of the Messiah is Jesus in the Quran. His title is Al-Masih, the Messiah. The only prophet who was born miraculously is Jesus. So with this regard, Jesus has a unique dimension, but when it comes to which one is superior to the other, Muslims will say, we do not distinguish between them. They are all messengers of God, and we believe in all of them. Yeah. So this is, there's another question. Stanisalus, maybe I'm mispronouncing. When Islam accepts gospel, is it the teaching of Jesus in Quran, or the gospels written by evangelists in the Christian tradition? That's a very good question. Actually, what Islam speaks of the gospel that is written by evangelists, that is the gospel. The Quran speaks of the message of Jesus, but when the Quran refers to the gospel that was written by the disciples of Jesus in the time of Jesus, that gospel. The only thing that Muslim scholars are commenting, they would say, unfortunately, the original format of that gospel is lost. So we don't have that original one. The current one may have some additions that was not related to Jesus added to that. But the original one is the word of God. The original gospel, which will be probably in Aramaic language, because that's the language of Jesus. The original one is what is referred in the Quran, not the collection of the messages of Jesus in the Quran. Yes, some scholars are calling the gospel of Jesus according to Islam, that is like collecting verses from the Quran. But here, when the Quran refers to the gospel, it refers to the real gospel of Jesus that is written by the disciples. Okay, there is another question here. Excuse me. There are observations that Quran borrowed considerably from the Bible. What is the historical influence of Bible on the Quran? Now, in the Islamic teaching, the author of the gospel, the author of the Quran, the author of the Torah, the author of the Psalms is one, and that is God. Now we use the author like for the Psalms author as David. No, Islam says no, David actually was receiving it. David is not the author. David is the receiver. The author is God. The Quran, the author is not Muhammad. Peace and blessing be upon him. He is the receiver of the message. God, not sent in the form of a paper, God sends these to their hearts, and they are feeling so much that this is engraved on their heart. They cannot forget it. Engraved, Prophet Muhammad said, as if it was engraved on my heart. I could not forget it. So the message is given to them by the divine, and sometimes there are similar, you see similarities, like the Quran clearly says. God says in the Quran, I have said this in the Torah. Anyone who kills a human being is like kill all humanity. I have said this in the Torah, the Quran says. Yeah, the Quran directly refers to the Torah and sometimes refers to the gospel. So the sender of the Quran is God, and therefore sometimes you will see similarities, which is if you look this from materialistic perspective, you say, oh, actually they are very similar. You know, like I wrote Islam, Jesus, another person wrote another book about Jesus, and I see some similarities. Well, he probably borrowed from my writings, and it is true. But for the messages of God, this is different. Prophet Muhammad did not have access to the Torah. There is no reference that he had access to the Torah, did not have access to the gospel, because he was illiterate, actually. Prophet Muhammad was unable to read and write. He was illiterate. And when the Quranic revelation would come, is remarkable. He had 7 scribes. He would say, now Angel Gabriel brought this message to me, engraved on my heart. I am telling you, write down, because I am afraid this will be lost. And they will write. And they would write. And then at the end, the Prophet compiled them, collected them, and then finally it became in the form of today's Quran. So there are big scholarly discussion of this. Many you know, like my colleague Michael Sell wrote a very good book on the Quran. He is professor at the University of Chicago. Many other scholars wrote, like I would say, again, another colleague wrote God in the Quran, very beautiful book. Only the concept of God in the Quran. Yeah, so the similarities doesn't mean borrowing. It means the author is the same. To summarize what I have said, the similarity doesn't mean they are borrowed from each other, but it means the author is the same. The author says this, at the same time says this. Again, Anoop's question, do Injil form a part of Bible? Yeah, when we say Injil, actually, that is the gospel. The gospel of Jesus. Now, with your permission, my laptop says your battery is low. Let me put the charger. Okay, I think it's good now. It's important to note that when the Quran says the gospel, you realize that I didn't use plural term, the gospel. There's only one gospel in the Quranic language. Gospel according to Matthew, gospel according to Luke, gospel according to John. The essence of this was one gospel. And I think now contemporary scholarship is saying that there was a Q gospel, Quell, a German term that is used for the source. There was a source gospel. So when the Quran speaks of the gospel, it's referred to that one. Maybe, I mean, Apostle Paul's letters are not the gospel according to the Quran. Yeah, they are very good sainthood dimension of Apostle Paul, but the gospel is the one was revealed to Jesus. That is the one gospel. It doesn't mean that Apostle Paul's letters are not good. They are remarkable because he was taught by Jesus. He took the teaching of Jesus and he gave the message of Jesus to people. So it is very important, but it is not at the level of the message that was revealed to Jesus. The gospel of Jesus is a divine word, the word of God. So that's why it is like in Islam also, companions of the Prophet would have something, but that would be considered inspiration, not revelation. There is a difference between inspiration and revelation in Islam. Inspiration is very powerful, is very important, but revelation is there. It is related to the intervention of Angel Gabriel. Angel Gabriel brings that message to the Prophet, and that's a very special case. Okay, so I hope I'm answering the questions. I don't, like we don't have time for follow-up. Binay's question, Binay Thomas' question, does the Quran have any relation to the apocryphal gospels, such as the infancy gospels of Thomas, the Arabic infancy gospel of the Gospel of James? Now, there is a reference. The Quran doesn't speak of those details, but one of my colleagues who studied the Gospel of Thomas, he said that this story of the speaking of Jesus from his cradle is mentioned actually in the infancy gospel, in the Gospel of Thomas. Very interesting. In the canonical Gospels, it is not mentioned, the story of Jesus speaking from his cradle. But in the Gospel of Thomas, it is mentioned. So the Quran speaks of this miracle of Jesus, and the Quran shares that aspect of the Gospel of Thomas, basically. Sometimes the Quran speaks of something that is not known. Later scholars actually they found that is very unique aspect of the Quran. Like my colleague Sidney Griffith, he is remarkable scholar of New Testament and also Semitic languages. He said that the Quran speaks of Trinity in one occasion as Jesus, God, and Mary, not Holy Spirit. And he said, some people said, oh, well, the Quran misunderstood the concept of Trinity. Actually, he says, he studied and he found that in Arabian Peninsula, there was a group of Christians at that time, in the time of revelation of the Quran. They believed in Trinity, in these three, Jesus, Mary, and God. The Trinity was described that way. So that is very unique aspect of the Quran. If the Quran didn't mention that, there will be no way to actually know about that group in that era. So Father Sidney Griffith is very beautifully explaining this aspect of the Quran. He's a Catholic father, Father Sidney Griffith. Okay, Anthony's question, what is the source of allusion to brown color? Could bronze be substituted? Sadly, modern politics in the US rejects brown families. I think it is not so essential. The only source is the hadith of the Prophet, and this hadith is authentic. He says, I saw in my dream his color, the color of Jesus. It is not so terrible to have different color for Jesus, I would say, unless you make other colors terrible, that will be kind of racism. But it is okay as long as you don't prohibit other things. Jesus could be, in Islam, he is the messenger of God. That is the most important aspect of it. The color is not so significant. The significant aspect is he is the messenger of God. But for the sake of accuracy, what will be a general color of the people who would be living in Bethlehem, in Nazareth, in the time of Jesus? And that makes sense to say, well, he was actually brown. But sometimes, as you said, politics may not be open to that. But I think maybe in the future, they will have more studies, and then they will make more probably research, and then find out that actually we made Jesus too much white, because we like Jesus to reflect us, not Jesus himself, but Jesus is reflecting us. And in this case, it's not Jesus, it's our understanding of Jesus, our understanding of the feature of Jesus. Okay, Michael's question, is there anything about the Last Supper in the teachings of Islam? What is the teachings of having a meal in the Islamic tradition? Yes, there is actually. I think because we are talking more about the coming of Jesus, I didn't have time to elaborate on that. But in the book, I mentioned the Last Supper. There is a chapter of the Quran, actually, Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5 of the Quran. It is named after the Last Supper of Jesus. Al-Ma'idah means table, the table of food. And his disciples are saying, Jesus, ask your Lord to send us food from heaven. And Jesus says, I will, but if the table comes from heaven and you reject it, you will be damned forever. Are you ready for that? And they say, you are ready. And actually, the food comes from heaven, and they join Jesus together. And it is believed that that story is referring, it doesn't say the Last Supper, but scholars are saying that that story in the Quran is referring to the Last Supper of Jesus. Okay, another question, Seed's question. Could you comment on the relationship between the second coming of Jesus and the ultimate realization of the ascent of man as advocated by Jacob Bronowski? Is it to be measured as universal mercy, peace, and justice? No, I don't. I have no reference to ascent of man. I haven't read that book, that view of Jacob Bronowski, but I like to learn more about that. What is known in the Islamic tradition is that humanity, after the descent of Jesus, and that peace, justice, and mercy and love, when these are dominant, humanity will reach to a very good level of life, a level that is considerably divinely praised. Human beings will find through this divine intervention, that is the coming of Jesus, Islamic scholars are saying the dominance of peace, and dialogue between Christians and Muslims, the largest two religions in the world. This will make humanity in a very high level. But then after that, there will be period that will be actually moving down towards the end, and that humanity will lost the connection with the divine. Now, in the Islamic teaching, this planet is a house given to humanity. Human beings are not the owner of it. They are dwellers of it. They are the people who are in this house for a certain period of time, temporarily. The owner of the house is God. And the production of this house is gratitude, thankfulness, and worship to God. If humanity is losing this dimension, that means the house is not productive. It doesn't produce what is expected to produce. And the owner of the house will say, I am going to destroy this house. You people don't make any progress. Any progress, that means you don't thank me, you don't worship me. Allah says, God says, then the end is near. But that would be late. And Christian tradition says raptures, like Jesus and those followers will just be taken. Islamic tradition doesn't say that. It says God will take the soul of the believers with a beautiful breeze that they will not see the horrific occurring of the end, which means the clash of the planet in another celestial body. That will be the end of human history. And that's why production is very important for the continuation of the house that is given to humanity. Production of worship, production of gratefulness is essential. When this will happen, Islamic tradition says only God knows. We don't know. Whatever God decides is his decision. You cannot say 10,000 years from now, or 1,000 years from now, or 500 years from now, only within the knowledge of God. We don't know the future. Only God knows the future.
Okay, Professor Zeki, we find Nasser Sloboda's hand raised. Nasser, could you please unmute your microphone and make your intervention now?
Yes, I would like to ask the professor, what does the term al-Masih practically means for the Muslims? Al-Masih being a title of Jesus. Does that have any practical application for Muslim believers?
Can you repeat again? I couldn't get it. The voice is very echoing.
I see. Can you hear me now?
I think it's better now. Yeah.
Yes. The title of Jesus in the Quran is al-Masih.
Oh, Al-Masih,
the
yes.
Messiah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What does that practically mean to the Muslim believers? Does it have any direct implication for Muslim believers, that particular title?
Yes, I think that is because it is in the Quran, the only prophet that has that title, the title of Al-Masih, the Messiah. And because of that, generally when Muslims speaks of Al-Masih, is the one who is anointed. That is a term used for Masih. And also the one who is traveling, there is a term also used. And the one who is eliminating something and bringing something new. There's also Al-Masih. But the messianic dimension of Jesus is only in the Islamic tradition. As a prophet. For example, there are many other prophets of God, but the only prophet that will come, that is Jesus, Al-Masih. So that could actually have a relationship to the title of Jesus, because the Messiah is the one who brings hope to people. And that means at the end of time, this messiahship of Jesus will emerge, and all Muslims believe in that. Actually, Abu Hanifa, a very prominent Muslim jurist, in his book on the Islamic Creed, he says, part of Islamic Creed, we believe that Jesus will come. We believe in the second coming of Jesus. And that is to bring hope to people, to bring justice, to bring mercy, to bring love to the human community. And that will not be randomly done. It will be through cooperation, through alliance of people. And therefore, alliance of people of the book coming together. The Quran uses the term the people of the book for Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Why they are called the people of the book? The book. The Quran is the book. The Torah is the book. The gospel is the book. So the people of the book, they come together and they work together and they fulfill the message of Jesus. And that is when it will bring hope to human beings.
Okay, Professor Zeki, maybe we could conclude with the final question from Michael. Does Islam teach about Messiah the same way as the Judaism teaches it?
I think it is a little bit different. Islam is the concept of Messiah. There are many terms, like the Mahdi, for example. The Mahdi is the Islamic Messiah, but his name is not the Messiah. His name is the Mahdi. The Mahdi means the guided one, the guided by God. He is on the right path. Why? He is guided by God. Jesus is the Messiah. The term is used for the Messiah in the Quran. I don't know the Judaic concept of the Messiah, because there is a big debate in the Judaic tradition also about the Messiah. But the Quran doesn't speak of Moses as Al-Masih. Moses is not the Messiah according to the Quran. Jesus is the Messiah according to the Quran. Al-Masih, the title of Jesus is Al-Masih. It is a long subject, but I'm not very good in the details of this term, actually. About Jesus, yes, I know more about Jesus, but other traditions, I don't know.
Okay, wonderful, Professor Zeki. Thank you so much. Professor Jerry, we are right on time to conclude.
I want to thank Professor Saritoprak for sharing his insights on Islam's Jesus. This was very illuminating. And thank you very much. And thank you everybody who participated We appreciate your spending this time with us. And Father Augustine, you want to say anything about next week or?
Yeah, friends, with this course, with this input, we are concluding our present course, the second course on Introduction to Theology. We have a Friday off between the courses. So next Friday, we will not be meeting. On August 1st, Friday, we will start with the new course, History of Science Religion Dialogue by Dr. John Carroll. I have shared this information on our WhatsApp group. Again, big thank you to Professor Zeki. There were a lot of new insights. I have studied a bit of Christianity and Islam, Jesus and so on, but many things were fresh and new to me as well. Big thank you for sharing your wonderful insight and scholarship with our group, Professor Zeki.
Thank you very much. I just put my website
Fine.
in chat. You can look at it. And also my email, I think on let me put my email as well. If you have questions, I will be happy to answer your questions in later times.
One other thing, Professor Seti, you're a leader in the Islamic Christian dialogue with the Catholic Church in the United States. We give thanks for your work on, you said that this is a sign of the future for humanity, and you're very much involved in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I am doing something that is contributing to that. That's very important.
I think it is very much so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You all have a wonderful time. And I see somebody wrote very beautiful Arabic. Shukran jazilan. Shukran jazilan lakum too. Shukran jazilan. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye now.
Okay, we can now leave, I think.